One day were Twilight invited by Celestia to Canterlot. They were going to have some tea, since Celestia has been quite busy for lately doing with her royal duties, and Twilight herself had been busy as the head mayor of the French School of Friendship. But now that since it was summer vacation, Twilight didn't have any time to spend at school, so she had a lot of time. So she was then invited by Celestia to have some tea so they could spend some time. While they were talking they were having tea, Twilight asked about some of Celestia's old past, like how it was like in her early years of ruling. If she had any great friends or like that, even she had time for friends, but even before that. Celestia did mention that even when she and Luna was appointed to be the next rulers of the kingdom, both of them were quite nervous how to ruling an entire kingdom by themselves. And they still had the great friends they want. Just sometimes they just wish they could just leave the entire ruling for one day to spend time with their friends. But as they both realized, they had to somehow ruling a kingdom, but they tried to make time to their friends. Celestia did mention she had a very great friend back then by the name Sugar Petal. Sugar Petal was born as a unicorn. But still, she proved to be a lot of things in talent. She was so talented in magic. But there was something about mentioning about Sugar Petal that made Celestia smile. Somehow, when she was about after 5 years of being in the role, she had decided to take Sugar Petal as a student, like as a personal student when she had such a shimmer and including with Twilight. Twilight was a little surprised that she actually has personal students so early in the early years. But she didn't ask what happened to Sugar Petal after she was some sort of student. She made a lot of progress in being a student. She even granted so much of this. She had made some even similar progress as Twilight did when she was in her student. But when she did mention something that Twilight didn't expect, she was even granted to be a princess, which Sugar Sugar Petal accepted. That made Twilight choke on a tea. She looked at Celestia and thought maybe this was some sort of joke. That Celestia had made her own personal student back then was an alicorn. She was celebrating unexpected. She asked Celestia if this was some sort of joke, because she had never heard of another alicorn in the past. Even though, even Celestia herself said, yes, it is true. She made such progress and she made the potential to be as one, and she actually became a princess. She became an alicorn like you and Cadus. But what didn't you mention about this before? Or at least, I never heard of anything like this. Why isn't this on her? Why haven't you even seen her, or at least some sort of mention about it in the past or in the history books? And it turned out from what Celestia told was next. Despite that Sugar Petal was now a princess, an alicorn like Celestia and Luna, she was offered to be positioned as the next princess in line with Celestia and Luna to rule the Equestria with them. But Sugar Petal said that she didn't feel the right if she wanted to be the next princess in line with them, especially ruling an entire kingdom. She said that she wanted to travel more instead, to experience. She wanted to learn more about herself, what potential she has. And of course, Celestia understood. But Sugar Petal said she will be back one day soon. And then, only a couple of days after she was granted as a princess, she left. And then Twilight asked if she has heard anything from Sugar Petal since. and it was silent for a brief moment. Celestia told her that in fact she had heard from Sugar Petal from time to time, but not for at least the past 2 years. And Twilight then asked where she was living. From the last time was Celestia knew where Sugar Petal was located was some part in Saudi Arabia. She wondered why she was had spent time in Saudi Arabia. Apparently, from what the last letters that Celestia got, she loved to spend time, and she loved the environment, and she loved it. So Twilight was very surprised that there were in fact another Alicorn princess out there, which has not even been revealed. But then she asked, why wasn't she had her name in the books as being mentioned? That was one of her requests, apparently, Fonsletta said. She didn't want to be mentioned as one of the royal princes, because before she felt it was ready for her, she was ready to be returned back to be as one of the princesses. She preferred not to be mentioned as a princess in the books or to any point at all. And of course, it was something that Celestia did granted her the wish. And that was the only explanation since, ever since then, she hadn't even returned back. From what she returned in the last letter to Celestia, mentioning that Celestia, I may not even want to be a princess of Equestria. I prefer to stay here in Saudi Arabia, where I prefer to be living. I love it here. Your friend, Sugar Petal. And that was 2 years earlier. Celestia and Twilight talk more about Sugar Petal before they moved on to another topic. But still deep down in Twilight's mind, the mention about Sugar Petal to be an alicorn, now living in Saudi Arabia, a princess, totally unknown to even her. It was unbelievable. But she wasn't even mad at her former teacher. This was something that she would believed and understood. If there was Twilight's case in this part, she may have done the same thing. And even though she couldn't stand from Sugar Petal's beliefs. And only a couple of days later, after that, Twilight had returned back to Ponyville. She still hadn't even mentioned about this potential other princess to her friends, because she had no idea how they would react, knowing there's another princess out there who has not even been decided to be as a princess. So, Twilight she decided to travel to Saudi Arabia alone, to maybe reach out to find Sugar Petal, or at least maybe talk to her about this. So she told Spike one morning she's going to leave for Saudi Arabia. When her friends was also there, they were all surprised at even hearing that, and Pinky said she would go back to the sugar corner to bring back some food with them. But in fact, when she told, she was going alone. This just shocked her friends, because any time when she was going somewhere, they usually goes with her. But this time, she said, this is a personal trip. Unfortunately, none of you can come along with me this time. But I will tell you the reason when I came back, why I went to this trip, and for what reason. But for until then, I can't even tell. After that, she left. Of course, her friends had even asked Spike for details. But he has no idea either, because Twilight never told him about the new princess that had come into her existence. Because she knew if she told Spike, he may have told them. So even though she would prefer not telling, keep this a secret, she preferred not even keep anything secret to her friends. But she did in fact told them. She will tell them everything when she returns. So on the way to Saudi Arabia, Twilight was still very curious to know more about this Sugar Petal. Why she has even returned to Questia for several hundred years? Because even despite this, when the train arrived to Saudi Arabia, this was in fact Twilight's very first visit to this distant kingdom. Even though she was very eager to learn more of traveling around in the kingdom itself to maybe learn more, go straight to local library to read more about the culture, history, magic like that. But this time she had a very more important mission to take care of first. But before she could do that, she needed to ask around if the locals had any idea where to find Sugar Petal. Because even though in the mention of previous letters from between Celestia and Sugar Petal, it doesn't even mention exactly where she lived. So Twilight had to ask around in town just in case if any pony there knows any where she could be or anywhere. When she came to call across a small shop in town, she asked the store owner if she knows about any pony by the name Sugar Petal. And in fact, the owner did know her, and it was a good friend of hers apparently. And she just lived just outside town, maybe it's 10 minutes of walk from there. And she gave us the straight directions for them to go to find her, and she thanked her. When Twilight came to this small place, it was like a small farm of some kind. There was no animals, but it was the same size as a small farm. There was a lot of garden there, and it was a beautiful place. When she saw there was an alicorn actually standing there, taking care of some flowers, when she saw Twilight, she was just amazed. She asked who she is and why she got here. She explained that she is Twilight Sparkle, the princess of friendship from Equestria. She then asked if she is Sugar Petal, which she confirmed. She then asked how she knew about her, and she explains that she was told by Celestia, her former teacher, and Sugar Petal was silent for a brief moment. But of course, she smiled and asked if she would come inside for some tea, which Twilight accepted. Back inside, they would just start talking about some adventures on the time when why reason and also another reason why Sugar Petal never returned home, or at least became back to Equestria. Sugar Petal explained the reason that when the first time she came to Saudi Arabia during her travels, she fell in love with this place. She fell in love with the culture, the ponies. Even when she left the time for the first time to go back to Equestria to see Celestia, she felt homesick. Not because she returned back to Equestria. She had fallen in love with the place, but she stayed at the time. So after she returned to Saudi Arabia, she decided to stay there, and that now became her friend, her home. She had been living in Saudi Arabia for nearly at least a couple of hundred years. Even though when Twilight did try to convince student to go back with her to Equestria. Even though when Sugar Petal said, I prefer not going back. I prefer staying here. This is my home now. I understand, said Twilight. But what about at least go back with me so you can see Celestia and Luna for just for a visit, for maybe for about a couple of days, so you two can spend some time, get to spend time again, at least. I will think about it, said Sugar Petal. So Twilight went back in town later that same afternoon to go back to a small hotel she had rented a room from. But the next day, Sugar Petal came to the hotel and she explained and told Twilight she will go she will go back with her for a visit. So they actually went back the same day. When they instead of going back straight to Camelot, they actually went to Ponyville. She told Sugar Petal that she wanted to introduce her friends to her, And of course, Sugar Petal didn't mind that. When her friends came to the castle, when they had arrived back to Boomy, her friends was expecting this explanation for why reason Twilight never told them why she went away. When she told them that she was in fact on a mission to find another Alicorn princess. Her friends looked at each other and said, "A princess? Do you mean there is another one that's even before you?" "That's right. Her name is Sugar Petal. She was in fact granted to be as a princess by Celestia and Luna in the early years when they ruled. So this princess predates both you and Chaos?" said Fluttershy with a smile. "Yeah, it is true, and she is in fact here." Her friends looked at her and said, "Wait, she's here?" said Rarity. "That's right." And they went inside the library where she saw Sugar Petal with Starlight and Spike. They were just talking when they met. And the first meeting with Sugar Petal with her friends went perfectly. They spent about a couple, maybe at least 2 hours of speaking with each other. Then Twilight went back with Sugar Petal to Canterlot. And of course, the meeting between Sugar Petal and Celestia, it went unexpected. We'd considered this was the first meeting between Celestia and Sugar Petal for over 2 years, or a little bit longer. Both of them started crying on this. Seeing them both cry and hugging each other made Twilight happy. The rest of the day, Sugar Petal and Celestia spent time just talking about all the memories they had. Celestia was really happy to see her old friend again. Even though she knows Sugar Petal was now staying in Canterlot for only a couple of days before going back home. But at least she was able to see her old friend again. Luna thanked Celeste Twilight for bringing back her old friend. To see her sister smiling, crying made herself really happy. But it was something else though, because during her stay in Canterlot, Sugar Petal even spent time with Twilight. She wanted to know more about Celestia's most recent personal student to get more. After all, now that they are also a fellow, since she is also an Alicorn, she wanted to know more about Twilight and her, how she became a princess and like that, and that is something they both bonded over. But despite the short visit, Celestia had noticed something between Sugar Petal and Twilight. There was not ordinary, just friendly bond between them. There was some sort of a spark, something she maybe had realized, or may have maybe even somehow sensed this could have happened. So, during this short time when Sugar Petal had stayed in Kent, she had fallen in love with Twilight, which Twilight had no idea about. But on the last day, Sugar Petal wondered herself if she should even tell Twilight. But when she told Celestia about this, she told her, "You would do what you think is best. Listen to your heart. That's the only advice I can tell you and give you." So only at the train station. After that, the others had left, except for Twilight. Sugar Petal wanted her to stay so that she could tell her something more in private. So she did. When Twilight was told that in fact Sugar Petal had a crush on her, or something that she had very strong feelings for, Twilight was amazed. She didn't expect, at least, to seeing her with some pony another fellow princess had fallen in love with her, despite having only known each other for at least a couple of days. But she smiled and said she did actually like her as well. So they decided to be pen pals. So over the next couple of months, they wrote letters back and forward to each other. And even then, there were not a spark for Twilight. Because during this constant writing letters back and forth to each other had made her realize she had fallen in love with Sugar Petal. And one day, just only a year later, Sugar Petal actually came to Ponyville to stay there. What she didn't tell, she actually had moved to Ponyville. She decided maybe it was time to move on, and even though that she still miss Sugar Arabia as a whole, but she had decided if she wanted to be with the pony that she loved most of all, she would do anything to be with her. So she had bought a small cottage just outside Ponyville, and when she told Twilight about this, she was very surprised. But she smiled and said that as long as they are happy together, she wouldn't mind it. And that sparked of a new relationship between Twilight and Sugar Petal. This relationship between them was actually something unusual. Despite that Sugar Petal was herself over 1,000 years old, but that didn't even stop them. Because when Twilight had told Cadence about this about a year earlier, she was fairly surprised because in fact there were another princess even before her. But she has no idea what's going to happen because just only a short time after Sugar Petal had moved to Ponyville, she in fact, along with Twilight, went to see Crystal Empire for a visit. Even then, Cadence could notice was something between them, but she didn't tell or he said anything. It was until when Twilight confirmed when Shining Armor asked if there was something between them. Then Cadence did say that she had a feeling there was something between them. After all, she is the princess of love. So Cadence was actually very happy to see Twilight had found some pony to be with, including even her older brother Shining Armor was very, very proud to find his younger sister had found some pony to be with, and especially another princess. Even when then, even when they went back to Catalan to spend time with her parents, she was not really expecting that her parents was going to be found out because they was actually being told that she had a girlfriend. But as Twilight had made Cadence and Shining Armor and not to tell her parents that she was dating an alicorn, she wanted them to be surprised about that. So she did. So when they went to see Twilight's parents, when they did see Sugar Petal was in fact an alicorn, both the babies used to look at each other like, and they both asked later during when they had dinner, how is it possible for her to be an alicorn? Did Twilight granted her to be an alicorn? Both of them just laughed and said no. In fact, and then they revealed the truth behind the reason. And it was still very supportive to see the daughter had found some opponent to be with. Even after all this, the love between Twilight and Sugar Petal had remained very, very strong. Even after all of this, what else could Twilight ask for? She was really happy to find some pony to be with. Even though long before she even met Sugar Petal, or even was mentioned about her name. Even some of her old friends had actually started asking her if she had started dating any pony or if she even was considered to be dating a pony. But since Twilight did mention back then, seems to be a teacher and the head mayor of the School of Friendship, made her quite occupied a lot of these days, and especially to be a princess of friendship. Sometimes she had to go on diplomatic missions along with the other princesses or some royal summits, and that gave her not even so much time to be dating, because she had no idea how much this relationship with another mayor or stallion would be working if she has been constant in work or constant away for so long time. She had no idea how this could have been stressing out in her potential relationship. So that was another reason why Twilight was never dating anybody. Even despite words and rumors or even some talks about even Twilight were even wanted to date or maybe for sure preferred to be single. But Twilight were in fact has an interest in dating at some point before, but after she became a princess and after she opened school, she became a bit more very stressful. She had a lot more royal duties taken care of. She became so occupied. But now when she had found Sugar Petal, it was more than she ever could expect. Because her love for her, it was so strong. And after that, after Twilight and Sugar Petal had been dating for about 3 years, they went actually to Candelot for to celebrate their anniversary. And after they had left the restaurant, took a walk around in town when they arrived to the park. When Sugar Petal asked Twilight if she could ask her something. So she said yes. And then Sugar Petal showed her a ring and asked if she wanted to marry her. And in which Twilight said yes. When they told their friends in Twilight's family about this, they were so excited. They were more than excited and beyond that. And especially her older brother, her parents, was beyond happy. Even her friends could see how happy she was when she spent time with Sugar Petal. Even after all of this, Twilight had truly found a soulmate. After this, only 2 months later, they had the wedding in Camelot. It was a perfect day for both of them. Twilight could have been more happier to be the one she loved the most. Even at the party itself, the whole family, all friends, could see how happy Twilight and Sugar Petal were when they first cheered to dance together. They really loved to see them so happy. They even went to Saudi Arabia for a whole week for a vacation for their honeymoon, which is something that Twilight had planned for. She didn't tell Sugar Petal about this just before they went on the honeymoon. When she was told, she was very excited. But now, because now Sugar Petal could show Twilight around more in Saudi Arabia for the honeymoon, take her to some of one of the best places of town, like the best restaurants, the best culture to experience. It was a great time for them. And they actually decided to move and live in Poland, put her permanently in the castle. And just after just after that they had been married for about 2 years, both Twilight and Sugar Petal had decided and talked they want to have a family. So they decide it was time to start. So Twilight used a spell that she had learned, and in fact, Sugar Petal wanted to be pregnant first. So she became that. And in fact, she actually gave birth later, a couple of months later, to an alicorn son. And when their son was about 5 years old, Twilight gave birth to twin daughters, both alicorns. They were not expecting to have a first an alicorn boy, and then next later, or sometime later on, twin daughters, also alicorns, but they were really excited. Even for all of those happened to them, Sugar Petal had never expected to be traveling to even expecting another princess. Because despite she had a lot of friends back home in Saudi Arabia, she wasn't even aware there was another princess out there along with Celestia and Luna. She wasn't even aware there was Cadence as a princess, or Twilight. After all, the news between Saudi Arabia and Equestria takes a lot of time to travel. Maybe there wasn't any reason for any pony in the Saudi Arabia knows about them. But nevertheless, Sugar Petal could have been more happier to have found some pony like Twilight. Even when she first realized she had feelings for Sugar Petal, she could not even be happier. Even if it wasn't for Sugar, even if it wasn't for Celestia, who had mentioned about Sugar Petal at all, Twilight never would have found her soulmate, and even Sugar Petal would never have met Twilight. And this is how Twilight Sparkle and Sugar Petal found a true love like a big family together. The end.